You're a Pisces, and people think they know what that means. Software sweet, emotional, sensitive. But what they never ask is, where does all that feeling go? Because being a Pisces doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wired to absorb the room, to feel the things no one says out loud, to carry pain that doesn't even belong to you, just because you can feel it. You're not just emotional. You're empathetic to the point of exhaustion. You walk into a room and instantly sense who's lying, who's hurting, who's pretending to be okay, and while everyone else makes small talk, you're already holding the energy of 3 people, filtering it through your nervous system and trying not to drown in it. You grew up this way. Most Pisces don't get to have a normal childhood. Not because of trauma necessarily, but because you felt everything way too early. You picked up on energy that adults didn't even know they were giving off. You could sense when something was off, even if no one talked about it. You knew when someone was pretending, and that did something to you. It made you quiet, observant, emotionally layered. It made you seek safety and escape. That's where the daydreaming comes from. That's where the fantasy world started. Not because you're naive, but because reality was too harsh too early. So you built your own. And to this day, you still go there. To art, to music, to solitude, to whatever gives you a break from the weight of everything else. Because Pisces doesn't just live in the present, you live in possibility, in longing, in emotional memory. That's why you hold on too long. That's why it's hard to let people go. That's why you forgive when they don't even say sorry, because you're more in touch with their potential than their pattern. But that kindness comes with a cost. You're the one who gets drained. You're the one who cries in silence. You're the one who picks up the pieces when it falls apart, and then apologizes for being too emotional. Because somewhere along the way, you were made to feel like your depth was too much. So you started hiding it, started performing emotional simplicity, started saying it's fine when it wasn't. And now, you have people who think they know you, but they've never even met the version of you that cries when they're alone just from feeling misunderstood. Because you're not soft, you're deep, and there's a difference. People misread that. They think you're passive, but you're not. You're choosing peace until the peace breaks, and then they meet the version of you that doesn't hold back. And when that version comes out, you either cut them off in silence or try to love them back into alignment, hoping they change. That's your pattern. You give people the benefit of the doubt, even when they've already shown you who they are. You love for who they could be, not who they consistently are, and it's beautiful. But it's also why you're tired. Because being Pisces means your soul is constantly in dialogue, with yourself, with others, with the world, with the divine. And no one sees how loud it gets in there. So you space out, you detach, you disappear. Not because you're flaky, but because your spirit can't breathe in spaces that don't feel safe. You're not avoiding life. You're trying to protect the parts of you that still believe in beauty, in real love, in connection that doesn't require shrinking. Because if you stop believing in that, you stop being you, and you're not ready to let that go. You're a Pisces. You weren't made to harden. You were made to feel fully. But now, you have to learn how to protect your depth without isolating your truth. That's the next version. That's where we go next. Let's talk about your flaw, because every Pisces has one, and no, it's not that you're too sensitive. It's that you keep trying to save people who were never willing to save themselves. You confuse potential with proof. You see the soul behind the dysfunction. You fall for the light you think is buried underneath all that chaos, and you tell yourself, if I just love them enough, they'll change. But here's what that does. It turns your heart into a rehab center. It turns your energy into a lifeline for people who are draining you. It turns your loyalty into self-destruction, all while you're calling it compassion. You give too much, not because you don't know your worth, but because you think that proving your love will make someone stay. So you overextend. You forgive without resolution. You stay when the signs are loud. You wait for them to become the version of themselves that only you can see. And that's your flaw. You're not blind. You just don't want to give up on someone, even when they've already given up on themselves. So what does that create? A cycle where you keep choosing love that feels familiar, not love that feels safe. You confuse intensity with intimacy. You mistake emotional highs and lows for depth. You convince yourself that pain is part of the process, and then later call it growth. But let's get honest. You're not growing when you're shrinking yourself to keep someone else comfortable. You're not healing when you're letting your boundaries erode for the sake of connection. You're not evolving when you keep repeating the same heartbreak with different names. Pisces, you need to hear this. Love is not supposed to hurt this much. And just because you understand someone's pain doesn't mean you're supposed to carry it. You're not their healer. You're not their savior. You're not responsible for turning them into the version of themselves that they keep promising but never becoming. And in trying to see the good, you've been abandoning the part of you that deserves consistency, stability, peace. You keep disappearing into people, losing your own needs, blending into their moods, becoming who they need, and forgetting what you need until it's too late. You call it empathy. But sometimes, it's avoidance, avoiding the truth, avoiding being alone, avoiding the part of you that knows they're not your person, but doesn't want to start over again. And when it's not love, it shows up in your passions. You delay your dreams. You second-guess your vision. You hide your art. You tell yourself, not yet, when deep down, you know it's fear disguised as divine timing. Because Pisces doesn't just deal with emotion. You deal with illusion. You swim in waters that blur reality with feeling. And if you're not grounded, you'll call intuition what's really just anxiety. You'll call fantasy what's really just avoidance. You'll call someone fated when they're just familiar. That's where your evolution begins. When you stop romanticizing red flags. When you stop waiting for people to rise to the level of love you already give. When you stop thinking you need to feel broken to be real. And finally realize you're allowed to love deeply without suffering for it. Your glow-up starts when you reclaim your energy. When you stop giving all your softness to people who don't protect it. When you finally understand that being kind doesn't mean being passive. And forgiving someone doesn't mean letting them stay. It begins when you stop shape-shifting, when you stop adjusting yourself to every room, when you walk in with your whole self and let the room adjust to you. That's when your light shifts. It gets stronger, cleaner, undeniable. You stop attracting chaos. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop waiting for closure and start creating it. And your life starts feeling like yours again. Timing matters for you more than almost any other sign. Not just because you feel everything, but because your energy absorbs the season you're in. And if the season is shifting, but you're stuck in old cycles, you'll keep drowning in emotions that aren't even yours to carry anymore. That's why we need to talk about your personal year. Because Pisces doesn't move linearly. You move in patterns, loops, waves. So when the timing is off, everything feels off. Your creativity, your clarity, your energy, your intuition. You move in a 9-year personal cycle. Every year has a different rhythm and focus. If you align with it, you feel flow. If you resist it, you feel fog. Let's calculate. Take your birth month and day and add it to the current year. Say you were born March 1st, 2006, and it's 2025. 3 plus 1 plus 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 equals 13. 1 plus 3 equals 4. That would put you in a personal year 4 right now. Let's break down what that actually means and how this cycle really works. Year 1, reset, new beginnings. You're building a new identity, new goals, and a new direction. The past doesn't belong here. Don't try to drag it forward. Year 2, emotional patience. Relationships feel heavier. Everything slows down. You're learning how to listen. This is not a launch year, it's a root year. Year 3, creativity, expansion. Ideas start to breathe. You want to be seen, heard, felt. This year wants expression, not silence. Year 4, discipline, foundation, structure. It feels heavy because it is. You're building habits and systems that will hold your future. This is the grind year. No shortcuts. Year 5, change, motion, glow up. Energy picks up fast. If you played year 4 right, this one launches you forward. If you didn't, the chaos shows. Year 6, commitment, choices, alignment. You'll be asked to decide what's real and who's worth keeping. Love, loyalty, and lifestyle all get tested. Year 7, solitude, reflection. This is your pullback year. Life quiets so you can hear your own voice. If you ignore that call, the year will feel empty. If you honor it, it's sacred. Year 8, power, money, control. This year is bold. Results show. But so do ego tests. You'll either scale with integrity or learn the cost of faking it. Year 9, completion, endings, emotional release. You're clearing space. Stop holding on. What leaves now is meant to, don't chase it. Then it resets, year 1 again, clean, sharp, evolved. So back to you. If 2025 is your personal year 4, you're in the season of foundation. That means all the emotional clarity, all the lessons, all the heaviness you've been carrying is supposed to be organized now. Not avoided, not spiritualized, not thrown into another dream. Organized. This is the year to create containers for your energy, boundaries, habits, systems, not to impress people, but to protect you. Pisces usually resists year 4 energy. Why? Because it feels restrictive. It wants structure, and structure makes you feel like your freedom's being taken away. But that's not what's happening. You're not being caged. You're being supported. Because without foundation, your dreams collapse under their own weight. Without discipline, your ideas float endlessly with no form. And without focus, your emotions become your environment instead of just a passing wave. This year is about getting real. Real about your energy. Real about what's draining you. Real about how you're using your time, your voice, your creativity. If you're in year 5, this is your shift, your upgrade. But it's fast, and it can get messy. Only move if it feels like truth, not temptation. If you're in year 6 or 7, you're in an emotional season. Relationships will mirror you. Solitude will call you. Don't rush. The clarity comes when you feel it through. And if you're in year 9, let it go. Whatever you're clinging to, if it's meant for your future, it wouldn't feel so heavy now. Here's what to avoid this year. Floating through life, waiting for a sign, avoiding necessary structure because it's uncomfortable. Over-romanticizing projects or people you've outgrown. Starting over every time something gets hard. Here's what to lean into. Habits that regulate your energy. Systems that support your creativity. Saying no. The first time something feels off, committing to fewer things, but with more soul. Because Pisces, this is where your depth meets direction. And when those two align, you become unshakable. You don't have to lose your softness. You just have to stop handing it to people and places that don't know what to do with it. This year isn't here to break you. It's here to build the version of you that never has to start over again. So what happens if you don't evolve? If you keep confusing love with sacrifice? If you keep waiting for people to become who they could be? If you keep shrinking yourself to maintain peace that isn't real? You'll keep carrying pain that was never yours. You'll keep silencing your truth in rooms where your energy is being drained. You'll keep mistaking being needed for being loved. And you'll wake up one day surrounded by people who don't really know you because you never felt safe enough to show them. You'll stay floating in a life that looks beautiful from the outside, but never really feels like home. You'll have people who say they love you, but only when you're easy to manage. You'll build things you don't believe in just to avoid conflict. You'll spiritualize every red flag. You'll say, everything happens for a reason. But deep down, you'll feel like you've been left behind by your own life. Because that's the Pisces wound. You want connection so badly. You'll twist your spirit to fit places you've outgrown. And instead of walking away, you'll stay until you disappear. But what if you stopped doing that? What if you evolved? What if you stopped letting guilt guide your choices? Stopped performing softness for people who confuse boundaries with rejection? Stopped healing everyone else while your own soul's been starving for rest? Here's what unlocks. You start protecting your energy like it's sacred, because it is. You stop giving the benefit of the doubt just because someone's been through pain. You stop calling potential love when the pattern is clearly destruction. And something wild happens. Your life finally slows down enough to feel like yours again. You build routines that hold your magic. You find peace in quiet, not loneliness. You feel powerful, not because you're in control, but because you finally trust yourself not to abandon your own truth anymore. You stop romanticizing chaos. You stop falling for people who need fixing. You stop letting your imagination run over your intuition. And you start creating from clarity. Your relationships shift. You no longer give all your depth to people who only want the surface. You don't stay just because it's familiar. You don't chase someone else's peace while sacrificing your own. You stop being scared of being too much. Because now, you know your energy is rare. And your glow-up? It's not loud. It's not aesthetic. It's real. You walk into rooms without explaining your vibe. You let your silence speak when people try to test you. You speak truth without apologizing for how much you feel. And the people who are meant for you, they don't flinch. They don't fumble you. They show up calm, present, ready. Because the moment you finally stop begging people to understand you is the moment the right ones find you without needing to be taught how to love you. Pisces, you were never meant to become harder. You were meant to become wiser. You were never meant to carry everyone else's weight. You were meant to guide by presence, not by pain. You were never meant to live in emotional survival mode. You were meant to feel freely from a place of safety, not desperation. So let this be the chapter where you come home, to your softness, to your truth, to your spirit that's been whispering, it's okay to let go now. You're a Pisces. You weren't made to escape this life. You were made to elevate it. Not by doing more, not by fixing anyone, but by finally being the version of you that knows they're whole, even without the noise. You don't have to lose yourself to feel love. You don't have to disappear to feel peace. You don't have to drown to prove you care. You just have to remember who you are and stop handing that truth to people who can't hold it. This is your era of clarity, and it starts the moment you choose yourself, loudly, softly, fully.